We've never had better tools to plan a surgery. 3D models, digital templating, anatomical overlays. You can print a full-scale replica of a patient's anatomy, hold it, trace it, pre-visualize every cut. With AR or VR, you can simulate the procedure step by step. Walk through a reverse shoulder, position the glenoid, rotate the implant, optimize screw trajectory, all in crisp digital space. And yet we still improvise in the OR. That's the contradiction. Planning looks more precise than ever, but its impact often stops at the screen. We design in millimeters and execute with approximations. We simulate ideal alignment and reach for those standard tools to get close. We build a strategy and head into the surgery with a tray and a backup. Because most plans don't fail from inaccuracy, they fail from isolation. There's no bridge between the mapped and the real. No system that translates the plan into action. No tool that ensures the simulation reaches the surgical field. And over time, we've started mistaking the plan itself for precision. It looks sharp. It took effort. It came from a software. But the body doesn't care what's on the screen. It responds only to what is done. This episode isn't a critique of planning. It's a critique of what happens when planning stands alone. Because a perfect plan that dies on the table, it's just a simulation. And surgical precision, real precision, only matters when it makes it to the patient. This is Unstandardized, built for one. Episode 3, The Myth of the Perfect Plan. Let's get into it. Planning didn't start with software. It started with transparent acetate, literal plastic overlays of implant shapes. Surgeons lined them up against printed x-rays to estimate size and placement. They'd trace angles, measure landmarks, sketch, then plan by hand. Then came digital radiography. The acetate moved to the screen. Tools like TraumaCAD, OrthoView let surgeons layer 2D templates on digital films. Still x-rays, still flat, but easier to save, share, and tweak. Fracture surgeons led the way. Templating nail lengths, screw angles, reduction paths. It was faster, not always more accurate. For arthroplasty, the real leap wasn't software, it was scanning. In the 1970s, Sir Gottfried Hounsfield developed the first practical CT scanner, and for the first time, joints could be visualized in full 3D. Length, width, version, offset, slope, rotation. By the early 2000s, platforms like ZHIP and Materialize were converting CT scans into 3D preoperative plans. By the 2010s, this became routine, especially in complex arthroplasty. Today, nearly every high-volume surgeon uses CT-based planning. But even with 3D scans, implant prediction often remains inconsistent. The visuals are powerful, the execution still a work in progress. And here's why. Most software doesn't generate personalized implant. It snaps the anatomy to the closest available size, to what's available on the shelf. It assumes trays, assumes modularity, it assumes the surgeon will adapt. The surgeon knows this. They don't treat the plan as gospel. They treat it as guidance. One surgeon put it to me best. We're not planning the surgery, we're planning which tray to open first. And that's where the illusion starts. The overlays, the dashboards, the VR walkthroughs, they feel advanced, and they are. But they often stop short. They build meticulous digital plans and still walk into the OR with standard tools and backup trays. So the broach feels off. The implant sits high, the exposure is tighter than expected. We downsize, shift, translate, and just like that, the plan becomes obsolete. We call it adaptability, but more often than not, it's just necessity. The danger? We've grown used to it. A plan fails, a component doesn't fit, the final result drifts from what was mapped. And no one is surprised. We've wrapped improvisation into muscle memory. We've trained ourselves to adapt, not because the system works, but because we don't expect it to. Is that a planning failure? Not exactly. It's not the surgeon, it's not the software, it's not even the surgical technique. It's what the plan is trying to control and what it has to work with. Because in most ORs, the implants are still standardized. The trays are pre-selected, the tools are built to shape the patient to the part, not the part to the patient. So even a perfect plan is executed with generic instruments. And in that setup, approximation is inevitable. Let's be clear, the implant isn't the whole villain here. It's one of the most rigorously engineered products in the hospital. But it's built for the average, and when the patient isn't average, the plan breaks down. Some systems try to bridge that gap with robotics. In many ways, they help, especially with orientation and placement, but most robots still rely on standard parts. They optimize the position of something that may never have been the right shape to begin with. That's not a knock on robotics. We'll dive into that on episode 4. But it highlights the deeper problem. We've built a system where the plan is precise and the parts are not. Digital blueprints, analog buildings. That's why planning needs a partner. Not just a model, but a tool. Something that doesn't just simulate accuracy, but delivers it. Something that carries version, angle, depth, and trajectory from software into the OR. Because if we're going to plan with precision, we need the systems that follow through. And in some hospitals, they already exist. They're not robotic, they're not multi-million-dollar platforms, they don't take months. They're fast, they're simple, and often they're more precise than anything we've used before. They're not theoretical, they're working today, and the hospital's willing to rethink how precision actually happens. So what does it look like when you follow through? To take a precise plan with all its angles, offset, and orientation and make it real. That's where surgical guides come in, and I'll be honest, I'm biased. Because the first time I saw a surgical guide replicate a digital plan down to the degree in millimeter, I realized something. This wasn't a simulation anymore. It was a blueprint made physical. A surgical guide isn't theory. It's not a dashboard. It's not a printout. It's a tool. It holds the plan physically and brings it to the OR table. These guides can be created from CT scans, aligned to patient-specific landmarks, and 3D printed or machined in hours. They control screw angles, bone cuts, joint alignment, resection paths. They've been used in shoulders, hips, tumor resections, cranioplasties, total hips, total knees, pediatrics, trauma, anywhere mechanical precision matters. And they've been around for decades. So why aren't they everywhere? Simple. They used to be too slow, too expensive, and too centralized. Surgeons would send out the case, wait a week or more, and often receive something they still had to revise. By the time the guide arrived, the schedule had changed or the anatomy had. But that's changing. With faster printers, smarter workflows, and better planning tools, guides now go from digital plan to the OR table in a matter of hours. When they're designed right, they aren't complex. They're clarifying. A top shoulder surgeon once told me, after seeing what a simple surgical guide could do for my glenoid screws, the accuracy, the time it saved, I honestly hate going back to checking angles with fluoroscopy. It's like giving up a GPS and going back to paper maps. The difference isn't just convenience, it's confidence, it's control. Now some hospitals are bringing this capability in-house. That's where point-of-care labs come in. Most hospital-based 3D labs started with anatomical modeling, helping visualize complex cases. But a few are now stepping into workflow itself. They're not just seeing the anatomy, they're planning with the surgeon, designing the guides, printing them fast. One of the best known examples of this is at the Mayo Clinic. Dr. Jonathan Morris and his team built a fully integrated 3D lab inside the hospitals, handling everything from anatomical models to patient-specific instruments for complex ortho and oncological cases. What used to take 2 to 3 weeks now gets done in under 48 hours. It doesn't just save time, it opens up new options and opportunities. We're seeing this shift at places like Northwell, HSS, and even what Rico is building, where lab teams work directly with surgeons to turn plans into tools, often within days. It's not the norm, not yet, but it's starting, and it's changing the model. One 3D lab manager told me something that stuck. For the first time in my career, a surgeon told me, that guide let me operate the way I planned it. Not adapt, not revise, just execute. This isn't a radical invention. It's the logical next step. We've spent decades digitizing surgery. Point-of-care labs bring that digital plan back into the surgical field with tools that match it. They decentralize precision, they return control to the clinical team. They cut the delays, the friction, the guesswork, and they allow the plan to do what it always was meant to do, lead the case. We're getting closer. For decades, the plan ended at the screen. Today, in a few places, it doesn't. The guide gets printed, the cut matches the model, the screws follow the angles mapped a week before, and in those cases, the plan holds. But we can't confuse possibility with prevalence. Most surgeries still adapt to the tray. Most tools still assume approximation. And most systems still ask the surgeon to improvise, even after the plan is done. So the truth remains, a plan alone isn't enough. Not until we build the tools and the system to carry it forward. Not until execution matches simulation. Because planning feels like the closest we've come to personalization, but it's also where precision most often dies. And that's where the work is. It's not a software problem, it's a systems problem. And solving it means rethinking how we equip the surgeon. not just how we prepare them. Because the future doesn't belong to the best pre-op. It belongs to the teams that can deliver on it every time. And that brings us to robotics. They promise execution, they deliver repeatability. But do they bring us closer to personalization? That's next. This is Unstandardized Built for One, the mission to make personalization the standard. See you in episode 4.